Over the last 5 years, we've witnessed Fortnite's island constantly facing off against world-ending threats, so while things sometimes feel disconnected, after years everything will tie together to create the next era of the storyline in Chapter 4. This entire time, there's always been one thing the story has revolved around. While you might expect it to be a person or organization, it's actually this orb of energy. This is the center of not just our story, but the creation of life itself. Millions of years before Chapter 1, there's a Big Bang which formed every universe in existence, the first one being Reality Zero, and it's here where our journey takes place. The aftermath of the Big Bang left behind a huge mass of energy known as the 0 point, which is tethered to every single reality. Because of this, beings have been trying to gain control over it for countless years, but it found a way to defend itself. The island was created to disguise the 0 point, sandwiching itself between two chunks of land. On the surface was a powerful storm along with a fake sky, appearing as a huge bubble in space and time. Anyone who went here was wiped out by the storm until one person defied the odds, becoming the first to wield the 0 point's power. This was Geno, an immortal scientist who's obsessed with perfection. Along with his mysterious inner circle, Geno created an organization known as the Imagined Order, with one goal in mind: to create the ideal society. He thought that if he could see how every world was made, he could use that information to perfect his surroundings, even going as far as genetically modifying his own daughters. So the Imagined Order built the Bridge, a base of operations where they could control the storm, using it to create the Loop. This is an experimental program that forces people to fight each other over and over again, and to make it a fair contest, it removes your memory, stops you from speaking, and resets every 22 minutes. Now, of course, nobody would agree to this, and that's why the IO opened portals to countless realities, kidnapping whoever they wanted for their new society. This went undetected for years, until Geno kidnapped the wrong kind of people. Some of them were extremely intelligent and managed to escape the loop, realizing that this horrifying program needs to be stopped. They formed a group dedicated to fighting against him, naming themselves the Seven. Their goal: to liberate the 0 point and destroy the loop no matter the cost. Our story begins hundreds of years later when the Visitor arrives on the island. He crashes down on a meteor to test the capabilities of their suits, protecting them from the loop. With the mission successful, he rips back home, but this causes a huge domino effect that we're still feeling today. Before the rift closes, a dark energy emerges in the form of a cube. It has enough power to destroy the island in a single blow, and this clearly isn't the first reality to be conquered. Even though the 0 point is able to defend itself, it needs help next time around. When a huge shard of ice crashes into the island, an alien creature is unleashed. The Imagined Order are perfectly fine with the monster killing everyone, but there is one person trying to convince them otherwise: the Paradigm, a skilled pilot and member of the Seven. She's currently imprisoned by the IO, who are worried that the monster poses a threat to the 0 point. Instead of their plan to kill it with a doomsday weapon, she offers to pilot the mech and defeat it herself. So, one of the IO's engineers, Singularity, constructs the robot while Paradigm prepares for the final showdown. After a huge battle, she emerges victorious and decides to investigate where the monster came from. The Seven are furious when they learn about this, especially the Foundation, who labels her a traitor. He's satisfied pretty quickly when they find out the robot crashed into a nearby planet called the Ice Moon. The temperatures are so low that it's impossible to survive, leaving them to assume Paradigm is dead. Now, there is one big problem: the monster exposed the 0 point, and it's destabilizing fast. As it prepares to implode, everything gets sucked into the orb, and for days, we get our first look at the Nothing. It is pure darkness. The name speaks for itself, as there is literally nothing left except for a black hole. Once the 0 point is stabilized, it spits everything back out, allowing the Imagined Order to gain control of the bridge and continue as normal. With the loop up and running again, they send a team of agents to survey the area. But this is where you need to understand one of the key elements of the story. Anyone who escapes the loop leaves behind a clone of themselves known as a snapshot. This team of agents came face to face with their snapshots, but there was something different. They weren't clones, they had been altered somehow, and the true perpetrator was about to reveal himself. Chaos Agent, a mad scientist with a thrilling backstory. He was part of a crime syndicate known as Shadow, founded by a mob boss with a hunger for power. For years, this group worked undercover, blackmailing people, gathering information, and amassing a huge wealth. At the top of this empire was MIDAS. Just like the legend he's based on, MIDAS was punished for being extremely greedy. At one point, he went searching for the body of King Oro, hoping to find his golden treasures, but instead, Midas found the curse of the Golden Touch. As time passes, Chaos Agent betrays him and takes Shadow for himself, and so Midas is furious, and he uses his wealth to create a new organization, Ghost. As they wage war against one another, a more important battle lies ahead. This marks the beginning of the Loop Breaker project, which we'll learn more about in Chapter 4, but the outcome of this is his device that'll push back the storm and destroy the loop once and for all. The imagined order, more importantly, John Jones, is trying to stop it. He's a field agent who has dedicated his life to the organization, leaving behind hundreds of snapshots. After MIDAS' plan is shut down, transforming the storm, it isn't long before Jones faces a new threat from outer space, and it leaves the Zero Point exposed once again. He can't risk anyone escaping the loop, so he recruits the galaxy's best bounty hunters to maintain order on the island. Throughout the next few months, Jones travels to 88 different realities, and by the time he finishes his job, he learns that the IO didn't do theirs. The Zero Point is on the brink of imploding. He begs his boss, Dr. Sloan, to do something, but she doesn't listen. They would rather let it destabilize than risk losing control, but not on Jones's watch, not again. He abandons the IO, turning his back on the organization he dedicated his life's work to. There is no choice but to take matters into his own hands.
You have your orders, now get out of there!
I'm gonna do what we should have done from the very start. I'm going to the 7.
You took an oath! You're betraying everything we stood for!
After throwing his portal device into the Zero Point, Jones summons the Foundation and asks for help. He refuses to work with him until Jones presents an offer he can't refuse, taking him to Geno. As the Zero Point breaks down and is on the brink of tearing itself apart, it starts to bloom like a flower. Jones says that he spent his whole life studying it, but this is the first time he's ever seen it react like this. There is no time to appreciate the view as the damage is irreversible. This thing is about to explode and take the entire island with it. There is only one option left. To contain the blast, the Foundation seals himself into a tower of stone. In the ultimate sacrifice, Jones overloads his portal gun, leaving him trapped in the loop. The spire is extremely tall, cutting off access to the Zero Point entirely. The imagined order is furious and arrests Jones for treason. Without access to the Zero Point, the IO needs to improvise. There are two ways to travel across the Omniverse, with the main one being pure portals. This was the only method the IO knew about, but there is another way, sideways rifts, which could be opened without the Zero Point. It's a technology that the Seven experimented with in Chapter 1 through the rocket launch, but they quickly realized that it takes a long time to close, making it extremely risky. This is what led to the arrival of the corruption cube that nearly destroyed the island, and thanks to the spire, it was about to get so much worse. With nobody in control of the Zero Point, it's left completely vulnerable, and this is where a huge mothership approaches the spire, obliterating it in an instant. Foundation is ejected out of the orb, while Sloan has no choice but to fight against the invasion. This mothership unleashes an army of aliens known as the Chimera as they abduct POIs and attempt to destroy the island piece by piece. Sloan begins work on Operation Skyfire, a way to take down the invaders and save Reality Zero for good. But for this to work, she needs the element of surprise. She plants dozens of bombs underneath Corny Complex and leaks the location to the Chimera, and they take the bait immediately. Now, Operation Skyfire won't work without the help of loopers. Sloan sends them into the mothership to make sure everything goes smoothly. Even though this plan is bulletproof, there is one thing Sloan never accounted for. While she masterminded the ambush, the Chimera had a surprise of their own.
This is impossible. We thought it was gone for good.
Sloan is terrified and realizes the true scale of the threat. Even though the loopers are able to shut down the cube, she leaves them to die. In a desperate attempt to survive, they reboot it, removing all of the dark energy and corruption to turn it blue. The elevator begins to rise, and this is where the reveal sets in. The Chimera weren't in charge. They were just a weapon, warriors of a larger enemy called the Last Reality, and their leader, the Cube Queen, has thousands of cubes at her disposal. Sloan's bombs detonate, sending the entire wrath of the Last Reality towards the island. Or so we thought. Just like the cube before it, this mothership was part of a colossal army, and the Queen was prepared to summon them. Now luckily, no one is giving up yet. Time and time again, the Seven have been here to save Reality, and this was their toughest challenge yet. For years, they have been putting together a plan that would take down the Last Reality and the IO in one quick sweep. With the Queen's sideways portals about to open, we catch a glimpse of the force she's about to unleash. While a war wages on the surface, Sloan is in the bridge about to terminate prisoner D204, aka John Jones. But seconds before they get exact revenge, they are ambushed by an old friend.
You came back for me.
You promised me, Geno.
Well, love you too, buddy.
As they head to the Zero Point chamber, Foundation tells Jones to turn off the gyro system, which will take everyone to the other side. As the island begins to flip, they rush to complete their plan and take control of the bridge. It's the final step that'll put an end to all of the fighting and free the Zero Point forever. And that's exactly why it fails, as the Last Reality show up, breaking open the glass and ruining their plan. It's only a small victory for the Last Reality as the island continues to flip, destroying the Cube Queen's portal. Her army is defeated for now. But I can't say the same for the Imagined Order, who are already plotting their counterattack. Sloane emerges from the ground wearing snow stealth gear to scout the new island. The Seven already know what's coming, a full-scale war. The scientist has an idea, but it's risky. The only way for them to survive the upcoming battle is help from an old friend. He believes that communicating with the Paradigm is their only hope, but the rest of the Seven refuse to listen. As far as they're concerned, she's a traitor and probably dead, but the scientist isn't gonna give up that easy. He breaks through to Paradigm, learning that she's alive and trapped inside the mech, but he needs to convince the Foundation to begin a rescue mission. So he lies, pretending he's talking to the AI in her suit. This is enough to deceive the Foundation, and they begin their journey to the Ice Moon. Meanwhile, the Imagined Order is out in full force. They have built a huge base of operations at Covert Cavern, forming a massive army of blimps, drills, and soldiers. At dawn, they begin their attack. The Zero War has begun as the Resistance comes face to face with the IO on the battlefield. It's a bloodbath as Sloane and her army take over the island and surround the sanctuary. But with the help of the Loopers, the Seven fight back. After months of war, they're able to take control of Tilted Towers, shoot down the IO blimps, and turn the tide. But the Order becomes desperate. Geno and Sloane begin to work on a doomsday device that'll annihilate everybody on the island. Ironically, it's the same plan that Paradigm stopped in Chapter 1, and now she has to do it all over again. As the Seven rescue her, Scientist reveals that he lied, as she explains her betrayal from all those years ago. Reluctantly, Foundation agrees to rebuild the mech and end the Zero War once and for all. It all comes to a close in the grand finale collision, as the Mecha Strike Commander blasts towards the island. In a huge battle, both sides clash one last time as Gunner is the first to fall. Thousands of IO units are wiped out as the Seven approach the collider, and when the war seems lost, Dr. Sloane is the last line of defense. Jones tells everybody to hold their fire. Him and Sloane have been co-workers, even friends, for hundreds of years. She wasn't always like this, and he's offering her a chance to finally redeem herself, surrender, and stop the bloodshed. But Sloane is too stubborn. She refuses to give up and aims her tank right at the Seven. What she doesn't realize is that she never had a choice. It was give up or die. So with only Geno remaining, he attacks his daughters, the Order and the Imagined, who join the Seven after he replaced them with superior snapshots. The Imagined is hungry for revenge, no matter what it costs, and it's here she gets her final wish, tackling her father into the Zero Point and killing both of them. As it cycles through countless realities per second, it rips them apart and scatters their atoms across the Omniverse. The Imagined dies in Geno's arms as he slowly fades away too, but before he goes, Geno leaves one final message for the Foundation. You always believed my methods were abhorrent, that you knew a better way. Congratulations, now you get to prove it. I genuinely hope you're right, because if you fail, it means the end of everything. I have to go now. I have to admit, it's good to lay my burden down after all this time. It'll be nice to rest. Let's just say, they should have listened to his warning. While the island party's celebrating their victory in the war, the Zero Point blooms and nature takes over. But it begins to send out distress signals. Strange relics start to appear around the island, and the scientist is confused and really can't understand why it's doing this. The Zero Point isn't searching for powerful weapons, something much more sinister is. Secretly, using the reality tree's power, the Herald finds the strongest weapon yet. Visiting the darkness, the nothing beyond all realities, she finds an evil presence. It gives her the power of Chrome, and it's about to be unleashed upon the island. The last reality can finally exact revenge. With Geno out of the way and the Seven caught off guard, they consume everyone. Only Paradigm is able to escape to an unknown reality 659. They have spent years annihilating universes, ensuring that they are the only ones left standing. But there are infinite realities, and the Zero Point is the only way to truly ensure that every single one is destroyed. With Chrome, it's time to finally complete their plan and ensure that the nothing is truly inevitable. The Paradigm is currently investigating the Loop Breaker project, hoping the answers are hidden inside, and it seems the only way to fight this Chrome is with gold. That is unless Geno returns sooner than we thought. He is currently piecing himself back together across multiple realities, so maybe he'll arrive just in time. After 4 years of constant mystery, action, and most importantly evolution, it is all coming together on December 3rd. Now you are fully caught up and ready for Fracture and what lays beyond. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's been Tommy, and keep it here on Top 5 Gaming.